It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions. Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports? We do. As we kick off this great sports weekend coming off the Thanksgiving holiday, this is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with the irreverent John Riley. We're broadcasting from our DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, a special holiday edition as we head towards the weekend. John, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Boy, do we have a lot of things to talk about as we move towards a big weekend in sports.
It's amazing how much sports happens during this time frame. There's football like every day of the week. We got all these college basketball tournaments that are on TV, so this is a great time. We
have a wide variety of things we need to do from a business standpoint before we jump into the topics on the table. John, we have crossed the one-year anniversary threshold with our podcast. It has exploded. Hacksaw's Headlines has become very popular on all types of platforms. And as we look towards 2024, we're doing something in addition to what we're doing with the podcast. We're inviting people to join us, Hacksaw's Insiders Group. You created this. You explain it to the followers.
Yeah, so Hacksaw's Insiders Group, this is your chance to be part of the team. Just go to leehacksawhamilton.com. In the upper right corner, there's an orange box. You can put in your email, get on our list, and you're going to get the best 15 minutes in sports, which is Hacksaw's, the homework that he does prior to these podcasts. You're going to see it all the sports data you're going to get. It's fantastic. Plus, we've got a lot of creative things planned for 2024. So join us. Sign up at leehacksawhamilton.com.
And we invite you to subscribe so you will get the alerts every time we put something else up on our YouTube channel. And if you got spare time, give us a thumbs up. And we need 5-star ratings because it helps our cause. And by the way, if you like sports, you've never checked my website out, what's wrong with you? It is written every day of the week. It is a must-read, a volume of information. If you like what we did in Sports Talk Radio back in the day, guarantee you will like my website, leehacksawhamilton.com. And a reminder, our podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores. 9 locations in San Diego, been in business for more than 100 years. Christmas shopping projects, they will help you. And don't forget to go to DIXIELINE.com. Check out all the special values as well as the bonus cards they're giving away for the holiday weekend. DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores. John, topic 1. It might be middle of football season, NBA, NHL underway. We're talking baseball.
Yeah, so the Padres finally made a decision on a manager. I mean, what do you think of this hire, Lee?
I like it. This is old school with new ideas. Mike Shildt gets hired. That's quite a resume he had with the St. Louis Cardinals, 255 and 199. Manager of the year one time, voted in the group for manager of the year the second time, won pennants, had a 17-game win streak. Man has accomplished a lot. He inherits a lot of uncertainty, and that's a big issue. He says, and his press conference was pretty emotional, and it was pretty straightforward. I thought it was very impressive. We're going to carry forward with Peter Seidler's vision, a.k.a. get this thing to the World Series. I am excited about my second act. I want to see the best version of myself. He's making reference to what happened to him at the end with the St. Louis Cardinals, where he got fired despite 3 impressive seasons. He says, my North Star is to win the division, beat the Dodgers, and then obviously get the chance to go to the World Series. Says his whole philosophy is a manager, and that was minor leagues, major leagues, all about communications. Says he likes Manny Machado's smile. He likes Joe Musgrove's passion. He likes Tatis's energy. He says, I have an excellent partner to work with in A.J. Preller. He said, 2023, this team has to learn from that past experience. Says he wants baseball with swagger, but he also wants it with substance. And it was really interesting. He spent a chunk of time talking about a legendary St. Louis Cardinals coach and administrator by the name of George Kissel. And Kissel is beloved in St. Louis, worked for the Cardinals for 66 years. He's the one that developed the Cardinal way. And he's the one that hired Tony La Russa and Jim Leland and Joe Torre and recommended Whitey Herzog and then Mike Shildt himself. So he quoted a lot of things that were in the book that George Kissel wrote about the Cardinal way. All that being said, he won the press conference. I was impressed. Guys experienced a lot of positive things. But that's kind of like we said 2 years ago this week when we were talking about the hiring of Bob Melvin.
Right.
I was of the opinion that A.J. Preller hit a home run getting Bob Melvin. This did not work out. This better be a grand slam home run, this hire, because it'll be the last hire that A.J. Preller ever makes if it does not work out. I like it. That being said, they got a roster full of problems. They got a lot of holes on the roster. So this first couple of weeks of December, A.J. Preller is going to have to go get players for his new manager. Your thoughts on Shildt?
I'm curious to see how he's going to do. I saw that he talks about being really detail-oriented. He takes a lot of detailed notes during the game, so he has very specific things to work with each individual player. That sounds good. He's got a track record, but, I'm not like jumping to the moon, but this seems like a solid hire, especially since he's been in the organization for 2 years. So we're going to see, but it is amazing that A.J. Preller has had how many kicks at the can here for a manager? It's incredible.
Well, we went from Bud Black to Pat Murphy to Andy Green to Jace Tingler to Bob Melvin. This guy is
and then
the
Barajas
sixth.
was in there somewhere.
Yeah,
too.
well, the interim guys too. So yeah, it's weird. But let's see what the next 2 weeks are like in terms of player acquisitions, because things are starting to happen other places in Major League Baseball. Okay, so we go from Padres, next team.
The Dodgers. You're talking about free agent rumors here. I mean, who does LA got to beat on here?
Well, the Dodgers, obviously, everybody of the opinion, are at the front of the line for Shohei Ohtani. I don't know how long a process this is going to be. Is it going to be instantaneous? I don't think Ohtani's free agency impacts very many teams. So it's not like he's going to hold up the rest of the line. I think there have been deals already made, and I do believe that deals are going to be made until Ohtani makes his decision. But Ohtani is obviously at the top of the list with Dodger baseball. Brandon Woodruff, perennial all-star workhorse Milwaukee Brewers, was non-tendered. Now, he's going to miss most of 2024 shoulder surgery he had right as the playoffs were to begin. They do creative stuff at Dodger Stadium. They might sign him to a 2-year deal. First year, smaller amount of money, do the rehab, we take care of you. And they do have a history of helping players through rehab. Second year would be an option. They pick up, he comes back and pitches the second year. They might be the front runner for Brandon Woodruff. Now, we also know that Blake Snell is out there. We've heard the Dodgers are interested in Blake Snell, but a whole bunch of other people are interested. Only caveat there, it's Blake Snell and it's Scott Boras. You're signing one and both along the way. They have open talks with the White Sox about frontline starting pitcher Dylan Cease. I was told that Chicago wants their top minor league catcher, Diego Cartaya. He had bolted through the farm system, but he stalled last year at AA, hit like 190, which was a bit of a surprise. But they want Cartaya, and they want one of the hot young pitchers, maybe Michael Grove or Gavin Stone, in a 2-for-1 deal for Dylan Cease. Cease had a 3.85 ERA. He was kind of a mid-rotation guy. Pretty good pitcher. Corbin Burns is out there. That's a tradable commodity from Milwaukee. Now, would they take on the final year of his contract? But they'd have to give up something significant. So I can't see the Dodgers doing both trades. I can't see them shipping 2 young players to Chicago for Cease and then more players get Corbin Burns. One of those guys might be there. The other guy in the equation is Tyler Glasnow, who had moved to the front of the Tampa Bay rotation, has had a history of injuries, first with the Pirates and then in Tampa. His contract number, though, this year, coming year, goes to $25 million. I don't know that they're going to be interested in him. And then obviously Snell's price tag. I hear 5 years, $125 million, but that's what Scott Boras is asking. Dodgers historically have never given anybody, any pitcher, a 5-year transaction. So that's where we are. There's going to be a domino. It's going to fall pretty quickly involving the Dodgers, involving one of those pitchers. So item 1 from left field, are they going to sign Ohtani? Is that the guy? And 2, which of the pitchers that I just ran through do you think makes the most sense?
Well, clearly they're, like you say, at the top of the list for Ohtani. I still claim that the Giants have a good shot at him. Not too many people are talking about that.
No, only the guys doing podcasts with the giant logo tattooed on their heart. But go ahead.
But I think the Dodger pitching situation is interesting because if you look at all of their starters from last year, they're almost all gone. I mean, like Kershaw's hurt, Arias is gone. Gonsolin is probably still hurt, right?
He's going to miss a chunk of next season.
Yeah, and then Buehler, hopefully he comes back. He's a big question mark. So
Dustin May won't be back till maybe June.
Yeah.
But then they do have the plethora of all the other young arms. I mean, there's no doubt that was a pretty impressive group down the stretch.
Well, I think we knew about those the young arms, and we've all been waiting for them. But all the other, the guys that have been around for a while, they're all question marks, so they're gone. So the Dodgers definitely need one, those starters. I mean, Dylan Cease is terrific. I mean, he's a really good pitcher. So getting him would be a great move for the Dodgers. But I think they've got to give those young guys a shot. I mean, a lot of them have shown some upside. And if you keep bringing in big name guys, then those, Mike Grove and some of those other dudes don't get a shot. I mean, you're kind of hurting yourself, I think, especially if you want to, get Ohtani. I mean, you've got to have some inexpensive guys on the roster.
So would you take on Cease and maybe rent Woodruff on a 2-year deal? Is that the best scenario? Because I don't know that you could have. Why would you burn out your farm system if you both go get Cease and then you get Corbin Burns?
Yeah. Well, I think, like you say, it's either Burns or Cease, not both. Okay. And then, Woodruff, that's more of a gamble. You're hoping that after a year, he's going to be good to come back. I remember the Padres did that a few years ago with a pitcher. They signed him to a 2-year deal, but the first year they were injured. Who was that pitcher?
Guy had been with the Red Sox and Angels, Garrett Richards.
Okay, that's who it was. Okay. And
it didn't work out.
No, that didn't work out either. So that's just a long shot. But I think if you had a rotation at the beginning of the year, let's just say Dylan Cease, let's assume Buehler is back. And then you've got Stone, Bobby Miller, and those three. And then, Pepio and
that's
Stone.
4. That's 5.
So then you've got something, So I don't think they need to get Cease and Burns and Woodruff. I mean, I think they're just going to get one of those.
And you haven't mentioned Kershaw. I do think Kershaw will come back on a 1-year deal,
but not till July or something.
Post surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're tracking Padres and we're tracking Dodgers. Something to look forward to in the group of podcasts ahead. Now we got other baseball stories to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of big names here on the board, a lot of teams buying and selling.
Yeah, real early. And as I said at the onset, we don't have to wait for Ohtani to sign. He's not holding up everything that's going on behind him. Philadelphia, Aaron Nola talked to a couple of teams, never made a visit. 7-year, $172 million deal. Guy's becoming co-ace on the Philly staff. That's $24.5 million per season for one of the top pitchers in the National League, and that's probably the kind of dollar value that would be attached to the other marquee free agent, Blake Snell. So Aaron Nola stays in Philadelphia. The Cardinals, I don't understand this at all. I mean, they are really short on pitching. Adam Wainwright has now officially retired. They had a lot of injuries. They've decided not to tender a couple of the young pitchers that faltered and had arm problems. We keep thinking they've got a load of outfielders, that there's going to be a big trade coming. One of those outfielders who's an everyday player is going for an arm. But the Cardinals signed Lance Lynn, gave up 44 home runs. Now, granted, they got him at an economic price of 1 year, $10 million. Then they went out and got Kyle Gibson, who was the only veteran on the Baltimore Orioles staff, and he signed a 2-year deal. But he had an ERA of 4.75. So I don't quite understand why St. Louis is spending this money on those guys without making the run at Blake Snell yet. And that was one of the first teams that was reported. So don't understand what the Cardinals are doing there. Arizona, they had talked to Justin Turner about jumping from Boston as a free agent. They changed their mind. They traded with Seattle. They got ex-Cincinnati Red Mariner slugger Eugenio Suarez come play third base. Hit 26 home runs last year. Does not hit for a big average and strikes out a lot, but does hit the long ball. I think he's got 248 home runs in the course of his career. So he goes to anchor third base for Arizona. He'll hit home runs there at Chase Field. They also signed a top minor leaguer. His name is Andre Chaparro, came from the Yankees. 35 home runs at AA and AAA last year, first baseman.
Oh.
So he's gone to Arizona. So suddenly Arizona's got power on the corners that they did not have
Mhm.
before. So that's interesting. White Sox trading everybody. They make the big deal with Atlanta. They trade one of their relief pitchers to the Braves. They get once promising Braves ace Mike Soroka, and they get number 1 draft pick pitcher Jared Schuster. Soroka's had nothing but injuries the last couple of years, a lot of flukish stuff. First it was a shoulder, then it was a calf, knocked him out for an extended period. Atlanta just moved him off the roster. So White Sox in total rebuild mode. Colorado Rockies, they need pitching everywhere. They went and they claimed Cal Quantrill from the Cleveland Guardians, the ex-Padre. So he's coming back to the National League West. He had pitched well with the Padres, pitched really well for a couple of years with Cleveland, had shoulder issues this past year, had a big contract number. The Guardians said no. Rockies said yes. So he goes immediately. He's healthy, I'm told, goes immediately in Colorado rotation. Atlanta's been moving young arms. Not only did they get rid of Soroka, they traded Kyle Wright to Kansas City. He was a promising starter, but he's had a year and a half of setbacks with the shoulder. They gave up on him. Atlanta did get relief pitcher Aaron Bummer from the White Sox in the deal. And Milwaukee, fire sale. Holy cow. Just they're getting rid of everybody. Next guy to vacate, aside from the pitchers we've talked about, might be Christian Yelich. So right out of the gate, free agent signing. So, John, pick a team there. We talked about, what do you think?
You talked earlier about the Cardinal way. I mean, how in the hell is Lance Lynn, consistent with the Cardinal way? That doesn't make any sense, because usually they have really good veterans, or they've got some hot young guys in their system that they bring up. And Lance Lynn ain't either one of those.
He's between middle of.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm curious. They do have a lot of outfielders, though. So something else is another shoe's going to drop. I guess this is the end of Evan Longoria, right? Did he retire?
Free agent.
He's a free agent.
But they elected not to keep him because he wasn't really productive. He's not what he used to be back in the day in Washington, or even what he was San Francisco. Maybe he surfaces somewhere else, but it'll probably be at a lower price tag. He didn't do much till they got to postseason, but then he played well.
Yeah. So he was third base, and now it's Suarez. And I remember there was a time when Padre, rumor mill was talking about Suarez. That's obviously before Machado came here. So yeah, he's a good player. But it is interesting that it seems like, well, the Aaron Nola signing was a big deal for the Phillies, but all the other ones are kind of like smaller, medium-sized deals. I mean, there's a lot of big ones that are going to drop. Blake Snell, did you see him at the game last night?
Mm-hmm.
He kind of kicked it off for the Seahawks. Seattle guy. I mean, the Mariners and Blake Snell, that could be an interesting match if the Mariners are willing to step up.
Do they have space on their roster for both him and Scott Boras? Knowing full well the price tag. The price tag is always stapled next to a marquee free agent name if it's a Scott Boras client, and that becomes the issue. And with the history of pitchers breaking down, if Boras is asking for 5 years, 125 for Blake Snell, and nobody that I know of is giving pitchers outside of maybe Garrett Cole those kind of contracts.
Well, Philly just did.
With Aaron Nola.
Yeah.
I agree. We're not done with free agency. This is the most unique aspect of free agency, and we got 1 month because there is a deadline with these guys.
Yeah, and these guys are interesting to me because they've had a great career so far in East Asia, and now that you can sign them and not have to give up any talent.
You got Japan, you got Korea, and in the month of December, these guys, their stars, get posted. Okay, the guy on the left is Jung-HOO Lee. He's a center fielder. Career batting average 325. Last year, hit 350 in Korea with about 25 home runs. He's only 25. He's going to be somebody's opening day center fielder. Now, I don't know if we're talking legendary power hitter here, or we're talking just good contact guy, gets on base, does hit some home runs. Jung-HOO Lee is his name. And I hear the Yankees and I hear the Giants more than I hear anybody else involving him. The guy on the right is the next great pitcher coming from Japan, Yamamoto. 11 teams have already made contact. He was just posted last week. This week, he started to take offers. 11 teams, I am told. Giants, Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, Cubs. Supposedly, he wants to play on a team that has another Asian American, Japanese or Korean player. So there's a culture linkage there. And he might want to play just on the West Coast rather than go somewhere east. You know, there have been so many great pitchers, from Yu Darvish to Dice Matsuzaka to Hideo Nomo to Kenta Maeda to Hyunjin Ryu. But so many great pitchers that come from Japan. And this guy is only 25 years of age. He was 16-6 with a 1.21 ERA. And his career in Japan, he's 75-30. Ooh. This is a can-do guy. I don't know what the price tag is. I had one agent kind of intimate to me, 3-year deal, prove himself, go back onto the open market a second time as a free agent at age 28. Another guy said, Japanese agents, 5 to 7-year deal because he's only 25, never had an arm problem. So it's fascinating because these guys are part of the dynamic now with Ohtani. Who would have thought the 3 premier players on the free agent list would all be from abroad?
Yeah, incredible. I mean, now talk about Lee first, coming from Korea, and he hit 350. Remember, Ha-Seong Kim struggled when he came over from Korea because the velocity is like 5 to 10 miles an hour more. So I'm wondering if Lee is going to make the adjustment. It took Ha-Seong Kim like a year and a half before he started to get productive. The Yamamoto kid, that's the guy. That's the guy that's legit. And imagine if you will, just let's pretend that Yamamoto and Ohtani like got together, kind of like LeBron and AD, and they say, we're going to get together and be a package deal going to one team. Wouldn't that be something?
Well, Ha-Seong Kim, and I don't know that this fits the Padres because of the payroll pairing that they're going to have to go through. Ha-Seong Kim is friends with Lee, but I don't think he can direct him to San Diego. Now, he can fill in the blanks about what's it like to come here, the culture, the friends, the food, and the adjustment in Major League Baseball. But it's really cool. I mean, these are 2 really good players, and Ohtani might be the first one goes off the board, but these guys from Korea and Japan are going to be there. And by the way, speaking of Japan, I'll just throw this in as a side note. I'm not sure what's going on with Trevor Bauer, because that's proven commodity major league level, leaving for exile in Japan, does really well, Yokohama Bay Stars. Agent has talked, I was told, 5 different teams. No one seems to know who. Guy can still pitch. And maybe just because of the track record of what he did to himself, maybe the price tag for Trevor Bauer is going to be a lot lower. You think that fits in the equation anywhere?
He's going to find a job someplace. I mean, he is too good of a pitcher. And it's been proven that he was set up in that scam by that woman. So he deserves a second chance.
Angels area code 714.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a great place for him to go. So he'll find a place somewhere. But it's interesting that all the talk are about these guys, Yamamoto and Lee, and not so much about Bauer.
And Bauer is the proven commodity, lifestyle not accepted. And somebody else asked me over the weekend, you think Artie Moreno would do that? Nobody likes Artie Moreno right now, so what the hell's the difference? If he gets a 15-game winner and the guy stays out of trouble and learns something from his bad choices.
Well, Angel fans always say that Artie Moreno goes for the shiny object that are hitters, not necessarily pitchers. But maybe Artie's figuring things out.
They need pitching for sure. Hey, we get to halftime. Before we do, let us remind you, our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center stores in San Diego. John, when it comes to projects, I have 2 left feet. I'm not real good at projects. Now, you live in this mansion here in our DIXIELINE Lumber studios, but you got projects, whether it's shelving, whether it's kitchens, whether it's cabinets, whether it's bookcases, whether it's something outside for the deck. Explain to everybody on our podcast how DIXIELINE Lumber becomes your best friend when it comes time for projects.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like a lot of things I've done around the house, and they've been so terrific at DIXIELINE. I mean, just if you want to, paint your kitchen or your bedroom, I mean, they got a great setup there with all the paints, all the paint supplies. They'll custom color the paint for you. But it's interesting because it's like a traditional hardware store, but at the same time, it's like a legit lumber yard that services contractors, so that they cater to the homeowner and the contractor, whatever you need.
And a reminder, with the holiday season ahead, you got plans. You get a free DIXIELINE gift card worth up to $600 with the purchase of selected doors, window products too. Fix it, build it. We guarantee you will enjoy it with your new best friend, DIXIELINE Lumber.
Let's go. Yeah. I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shoot tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. 'Cause damn, I was built to last.
And we hope you're enjoying our holiday bonus edition of our podcast. Because we're doing a special bonus edition for the next couple of days, we won't have the fans forum at the end of our session today. But John, what we are doing is introducing to all of our followers on our live stream broadcast our brand new Hacksaw Insiders group. We're looking for teammates to join our team. Explain how they do.
So, yeah, you want to join the team, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com. In the upper right corner, there's an orange box. Fill in your name and or your email address. I mean, people are signing up. Like every day, we're getting tons of signups. And the information that you're going to get is fabulous. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of sports information. Plus, we're going to have a lot of special events and things that we're cooking up in 2024 that you can be a part of.
We want you to be part of our team. And by the way, you like sports, you need to check my website, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. I write on it every day. If you're not checking it, you're really missing out on a ton of information. And when you sign up, subscribe, so you'll get the alerts every time we put something new on the YouTube channel, which is a lot, and give us a thumbs up, because he has no friends and nobody likes me. Give us a 5-star rating. We need some friends too. John, we go to the second half of our holiday podcast.
Yeah, I mean, big rivalry weekend. I think we're all looking forward to this Michigan-Ohio State game. Wow.
119th edition Wolverines Buckeyes. Oh, this is all about bitter history. This is a way of life in the upper Midwest. I've been to the Horseshoe to cover that game. I've been to the Big House in Ann Arbor. You start talking about 106,000 fans every time they play. It's the last game of the season. These two schools don't like each other. Historically, the two coaches have never gotten along. This was all fueled by Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes. They were both Miami of Ohio guys, but they didn't get along. Miami of Ohio, cradle of coaches. We've got history of verbal gunfire between both Bo and Woody at the height of the rivalry. We had the snowball game that the coaches insisted had to be played in a blizzard in 1950. The pictures of the snowball game are absolutely phenomenal. And you got coaches making unbelievable statements, like Bo telling Woody at a press conference, "You're my best friend, but not this Saturday." or Woody referring to those guys as the school up north. Nobody was ever allowed to invoke the word Michigan in any conversation inside the confines at Ohio State. And we've had games where Ohio State ran up the score. 56-point victory one game, 52-point victory the next game. And we also had Michigan wins the last 2 years, scoring 42 and 45 against the Buckeyes. And then there was this incident. Woody was beating Bo by more than 40 points in one game, and they scored a touchdown at the end of the game. And Woody went for a 2-point conversion while they're blowing him out. So the post-game press conference, there's all this history of, why would you do that? And Woody said, well, I don't know that there's a rule for a 3-point play, but if there was a 3-point play, I would have run that one too. Mm-hmm. So there's great history. This game, they're both 11-0. Somebody's going to get bumped. I don't know if somebody's going to fall out of the top 4 in the college playoff poll, but you got 2 versus 3. Somebody could take a hit here. Kyle McCord, unbelievable season. Sophomore, Ohio State. Quarterback's throwing for 2,900 yards and 22 touchdowns. Has not gotten any national recognition for what he's done, but he's done really well. And Marvin Harrison, who might be a Heisman Trophy candidate, wide receiver, son of the NFL receiver, 62 catches, over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns this season. So he's really good. Michigan, J.J. McCarthy, 18 touchdown passes. He's had a brilliant season. Young guy, 2,335 yards passing. The two running backs between him, B.J. Corum and Don Edwards, have a combined 1,800 yards rushing. Michigan's defense. John, these statistics are amazing. You have the ball going against Michigan's defense. Mm-hmm. Michigan's only given up 234 yards per game.
Wow, that's incredible.
Oh, yeah, it is incredible. Yeah. And on third down, only 30% conversion rate and 19 turnovers. So Michigan, Ohio State, my God, what a rivalry. And if you're a West Coast guy who's never been east of the Rockies, you can't identify with it. I mean, it's like nothing I've experienced. Now, I grant you, I broadcast USC, UCLA. And I went to a Civil War game, Oregon State. Those are pretty intense, and those are a lot of fun and very colorful. But this thing, it's like a war. It's amazing. So you got Michigan, Ohio State. You got the Civil War game, Oregon State. They have not announced a contract extension because with Oregon leaving, Washington leaving, the whole Pac-12 leaving, a lot of bitterness. Oregon State, this is for all the marbles. They first started playing the Civil War in 1890. It's just great. There have been 45-42 games. There have been 3-0 games in rain and mud. It's just really a cool series. Jonathan Smith has done such a great job at Oregon State. The big question at this hour, might this be his final home game? Jonathan Smith is being pursued by Michigan State. Now, he's an Oregon State guy. He played there under Dennis Erickson, did really well, went off, became a assistant coach, became a hot coordinator, and got the head coaching job. He's done a marvelous job in Corvallis. Might this be his last game? The Ducks, 546 yards per game offensively. Would you love to see Oregon play Michigan's defense?
Wow.
Oh, wow. Bo Nix, 35 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions for the Ducks. He's thrown for over 3,500 yards. I think Oregon State's going to try to run the damn ball. Damian Martinez, almost 1,200 yards on the ground for the Beavers. They might just try to play power ball and keep Bo Nix off the field. So that's the second big rivalry game. Third one will be the Apple Cup. Now, they're doing it different across the border, whereas the guys in Oregon are really pissed at each other over this Pac-12 thing. Washington State just announced an 8-year extension for the Apple Cup.
Oh, nice.
So they're going to continue that rivalry. Washington has climbed into fourth spot in the college football polls. Michael Penix, 30 touchdowns on the season, nearly 3,700 yards passing. What a mystical year the Huskies quarterback has had. And Washington's offense, 423 yards per game. Washington State's got a really good quarterback in Cam Ward, but their defense has not held up the back half of the schedule. So those are the 3 marquee games. I wish you could have experienced Bo Woody. I mean, I know you're a West Coast dude, San Francisco, and you'd probably quote me, song and dance, the game, Stanford.
I remember that.
Cal. Nah.
Yeah.
Everybody understands Stanford Cal for the band.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody remembers Ohio State, Michigan for Bo and Woody. So what do you think of the games?
Well, yeah, the game, remember that crazy one? That was John Elway's last college football game.
Joe Starkey yelling into the radio, The band is on the field. The band is on the field. Funny.
The trombone guy gets knocked out. This Michigan-Ohio State, I mean, this is the big rivalry in all of college football. I am so sick and tired of Ohio State. You know, it's like it was always Ohio State, Alabama. We're always in the playoff. And, you know, I know people that are Ohio State people, you know, and they just love chirping about their team. And I'm just so tired of them. So I find myself rooting for I guess the dark side for Michigan. Am I rooting for
the official colors are maize and blue?
Yeah. Okay. Well, but I'm kind of rooting, I think, for Michigan. You called Michigan as being maybe the best team in the nation that might finish the year up as number 1. I mean, do you think they're going to win this game? Who's favored?
I think Michigan has to be favored. And I cannot imagine what it will be like in the 614 area code Saturday night for Ryan Day if Ohio State loses a 3rd straight game. And they could. Michigan is the complete team. Whether you are pro or anti-Harbaugh, Michigan is a great football team.
Yeah, and then the other games, I want a West Coast team to win the national championship. So I just want to see Oregon and Washington take care of business. But it is kind of cool that this is rivalry week. There were some rivalry games last weekend, I think, but even some teams have their rivalry weekends earlier in the year, like the Bedlam with Oklahoma State, and that rivalry is going out the window. So a lot of changing here.
Okay, so big weekend college football. Let's talk hoops because there is stuff going on here.
Yeah, so I mean, college hoops, or excuse me, we're going to talk about these guys first, right?
Yeah, let's talk about this. We're talking about the end of the run. Aztecs play Fresno State. Meaningless game for San Diego State. Really bad season. Important game for Fresno State. Can they get into the playoffs in the Mountain West Conference? I've had injury problems at quarterback. But the bigger storyline should be, and sadly, nobody in this community seems to be talking about it nor care about it. These two guys saved San Diego State football. Talking about Brady Hoke, talking about his predecessor, Rocky Long. Their combined record between those two guys is 120 wins, 69 losses, and all those bowl games. And they inherited a program that had 11 straight losing seasons and really fallen off the radar. I had not done anything since the 1990s and the Marshall Faulk, very early years. So Brady, very emotional. His press briefings this week. Rocky, of course, went back to New Mexico, then went to Syracuse. They just fired the staff at Syracuse. So Rocky is probably headed back this way to retirement, but I don't think he wants to coach any longer. But history should write. Rocky, Brady, saved San Diego State football. Whether people like the style or not, that record, 120 and 69, is really impressive. And I just think that there are a lot of people, a lot of alumni, student body, that owe those guys, including Brady, despite the bad season, owe those guys a real special thank you because they saved this thing. You know, way back in the 70s, there was talk that they were going to fold the program. They were going to do at San Diego State what was done at Pacific and Cal State Fullerton and Redlands. They were going to eradicate college football because they weren't winning and it was draining the coffers of the school. But those two guys saved it. So I think they're honorable men. I say thank you. And I'm going to miss them.
Well, you've had a relationship with Brady. I mean, you guys chat and hang out a little bit. But, you know, I'll tell you what, the fans, it seems like there's this mixed feeling, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, on one hand, we're like, yeah, they saved our program. And yeah, Hoke was a winner and we loved him and he's an honorable guy. But other people are saying, good riddance. Let's get him out of here. Let's get in a new coach. They do need to, how should I say, reform the system so they can have a high-powered West Coast offense. So hopefully the new guy comes in and is going to take care of it. But I think you have to tip your hat to Brady Hoke on the way out the door, even though this year and last year have been so frustrating.
And I think the reality is San Diego State has really suffered with the NIL issue, and the transfer portal has hurt them. They've lost 6 offensive linemen in 2 years.
Ooh.
Who have left for a wide variety of reasons. Couple defected, went to the NFL, should have never, ever done that. Others went into the transfer portal and got taken up by other schools, and some are playing and some are not playing. So the landscape of college football at this level, the group of 5 level, has really drastically changed. Mm-hmm. And I could read between the lines, and I'm a big believer in body language, that Brady was really upset that he could not control what college football had become. They don't have a lot of NIL money, and they kept getting their kids cherry-picked by Pac-12 schools, Big Ten schools. It was a big issue, and I think his frustration point was really sad. But it was interesting at the press conference. So we got done. There was hardly anybody there at the press briefing, and Brady always wraps up, says, "Any other questions, men?" So I raised my hand, and I said, "Hey, from this side of the room, Coach, we want to thank you for being a stand-up guy and hanging in there every Tuesday when we kept asking you questions about being in 3rd and long for your whole life on offense." He answered all the questions. And I said, yeah, sometimes we had to dig through 3 feet of coach speak to actually get the good quotes that we wanted from you, but we did that. And then I laughed at him. I said, while you were lecturing us about how to do our job, I said, I just picked up my cell phone, and on my cell phone, your wife has just put on social media the honeydew list for you when you retire. And I'll tell you, it's as thick as this press release. So you might want to consider coaching again. But I said, hey, in all honesty, the general consensus is Brady Hoke, Rocky Long. Brady Hoke saved San Diego State football. So I'm going to miss exchanging gunfire with him every Tuesday. But whoever they hire, I sure hope it has offensive genius stapled to his resume and his driver's license.
Yeah, I mean, we hope so too. And some of the candidates they've been discussing sound interesting. I mean, again, it's still very early, but Wicker said he's going to make a decision quickly, though, didn't he?
I would think in 2 weeks we'll have a new leader of Aztec football. I just hope it's somebody with offense in his DNA. Okay, let's go from college football. Let's go to basketball.
Yeah, all of these tournaments that are going on over the holiday weekend and great storylines.
Yeah, let's start with UCLA. You know, they went to the Maui Classic and they almost beat Marquette, which is pretty doggone good. And they had Gonzaga right on the ropes right at the end. But what a job Mick Cronin has done. UCLA's got a foreign legion roster. You know, and college basketball has really changed. If you got pipelines and you can recruit Europe, and if you can recruit to a degree South Africa, boy, there's a lot of players coming to NCAA Division I programs, and their roster is made up of some really unique people. They have a 7'3" center from Spain, Ade Bora, and he's really active offensively, and he takes up a lot of space and changes the direction of shots defensively. They went to Nigeria, and they got a 6'10" power forward, Adem Boa. Cleans the glass, rebounder, scores a little bit. And then they just got approval from the NCAA, the transfer of a 6'9" forward center from Turkey, Berk Bayuktensel. He's struggling a little bit with this game, but he was playing in the pro leagues over there, so he's got his whole future ahead of him. And I got Sebastian Mack, who's a real stroker and a guard. So Mick Cronin, this foreign legion, these guys have all shown up, and they can play right now, and they're playing right now. So this UCLA season, going into the Pac-12, coming out, going towards March Madness, because of the foreign legion, this is a really fascinating team to look at. Meanwhile, San Diego State, Aztecs, vintage Brian Dutcher, they're 4-1 on the season. And we talked extensively about Jaden Ledee. And I had said way back, I'm glad he came back. He did not go into the draft. He got evaluated, could have gone into the draft, would have been somebody's second-round pick, might have been in the G League, whatever, come back for his last year. I mean, he scored 21, 24, 27, and 34 points in the last group of games. And this is with defenses collapsing on him, etc. This guy might turn out to be one of the best big men in the country. The Aztecs are set at point guard. Reese Waters has come in, got off the bus from Southern Cal, stroking it. He's given him real firepower in place of Matt Bradley, who went to Europe after he finally graduated. And you got Butler, you got Trammell once he gets healthy. The key guys to me are the bookend forwards. They have to get point production out of Micah Parrish, who can shoot threes. Mm-hmm. He's in his second year. Now he's a starter. And the young kid, Elijah Sanders, I think they will. They're going to have to develop some offense coming off the bench, because right now the contributions from any of the guys as the 6th, 7th, and 8th men is almost negligible. And historically, last group of years, Aztecs, when they looked down that bench, here came a rope. And here came Seiko, the three-point shooters. So they're going to have to get some points because the starters are playing an awful lot of minutes. But they battered St. Mary's, and they got involved in the shootout with Washington. They beat Long Beach, and Long Beach the next game went to Michigan and beat the Wolverines. Mm-hmm. And coming up, they're going to play Gonzaga. So UCLA, San Diego State basketball. Wow.
Yeah, big time wow. And imagine that. He scored 100 points in that game against Washington. So it's amazing because they used to be all defense, right? Now we've got a good offense, and Jaden Ledee is player of the year. I mean, this guy is incredible. So, yeah, the Aztecs, great. Now, you're wondering after what the great season last year, how they would do this year, but they're right on track. Going back to UCLA, though, it just seems that the whole history and the John Wooden era and everything almost, I don't know, does it hold UCLA back? Because we still think of UCLA from, their glory days, and they've never been quite the same. But now finally they're maybe competitive again. But they only seem to they won the national championship once in the 90s, but they haven't really done that much, right? I mean,
now the landscape has changed.
Yeah.
Yes. The minute you look at that UCLA logo, my mind automatically goes to John Wooden,
yes,
Bill Walton, Lou Alcindor,
Yeah.
and just the myriad of great players that wore UCLA colors. But they had some really good years under Jim Herrick, but this is a different time and place with transfer portals, NILs, and now going abroad. And Mick Cronin, much like the coach down at Arizona, they got a pipeline to foreign players.
Oh, yeah.
For him to come up with 3 bigs and get them all eligible immediately and come in, and 2 of them are playing standout basketball. The third one will get there. I'm so impressed with Cronin's ability to go find unique and really different players. March Madness will be fun because it's going to have a UCLA element. I don't know if it have a USC element. It might have the San Diego State element again going forward. So got a lot to look forward to.
Well, doesn't it kind of remind you a little bit of Randy Bennett and St. Mary's, that foreign pipeline kind of thing? It's cool. But, talking about other good teams, BYU is still playing really well. Did you see that fight between the BYU player and the Arizona State player?
Yeah, I heard about it.
They got tangled up. A guy got punched in the face. So, but BYU is tough. I think they're ranked like number 12 or 14, somewhere around there.
And you haven't mentioned Gonzaga yet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And how did Gonzaga get good? From abroad.
From abroad. Yeah, absolutely. So, San Diego State only has 1 loss, but it is to a very good team.
Okay, on we go from college basketball. We got something to talk about hockey.
Yeah, hockey news here. A little Olympics, World Cup. What do you got here?
Well, it's a big issue in the National Hockey League right now with Gary Bettman as the commissioner. As you know, the Winter Olympics will be coming up, and they were not in the last Olympics. And the NHL, which had initially said, hey, we want our players to go through this experience of playing for the flag. But the problem they had was, who takes care of any player that gets hurt in the Olympics? There's a big insurance issue. Then the second thing is, how does it impact our schedule? We don't think we should stop our NHL season in January, take a 2-week hiatus so these guys can go play abroad. So they have not gone back to the Olympics now, the last 2 or 3 Olympics. There's a conversation going on right now of starting up again what's, I guess, would be called the World Cup of Hockey. And they had done this before. It was way back in the 70s and 80s. It was to have NHL stars play the Russian professionals. And that was during the era of the Iron Curtain. Well, that was flashy, and that happened, and there's history that surrounds all that, the international games. Well, there's talk now about an international tournament. I don't understand Gary Bettman's thinking. He's proposed, because they don't want to shut down for 2 weeks, he's proposed a 1-week mid-season tournament. But it would only involve 4 countries: USA, Canada, where the game was born, Sweden, and Finland. And there's a ton of Scandinavians that are playing in the NHL now.
Yeah.
So I asked the question to myself the other day, Russia, all the European countries, why are you excluding them? You don't want Alexander Ovechkin, the future Hall of Famer Washington Capitals, to play in a NHL international tournament? How can that be? So the union's going to get involved in this, but my theory is, okay, if you only want to have 4 teams so you can make it worthwhile with a schedule, just have US, Canada, have a Scandinavian team, and then have a European team that encompasses every other guy. Because there's players from Belarus, and there's players from Latvia, and obviously so many really good Russian players, Putin notwithstanding. So you got to allow everybody to come.
Yeah.
So we'll see where this goes, but the union's going to have some involvement here. They want to limit it to 4. Well, do it. Team USA, Team Canada, Team Scandinavia, Team Europe. That's my solution if I were king.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to have a World Cup, then don't limit it to 4. I mean, let's make it a real World Cup. Because, like, to your point, there's a lot of other nations. I mean, Austria usually has a pretty good team. And you were talking about, what was it? Was it Finland and Sweden? But what about Norway?
You talk Team Scandinavia.
Well, if you lump them all together, sure. But then so I don't know. I hope that they can work out a deal to get them in the Olympics, because I think that's where this would be terrific, on a nation by nation basis.
Yeah, but baseball doesn't stop its season for 2 weeks so somebody can go play World Baseball.
Well, but European soccer does. The NBA is sort of kind of doing that now with their in-season tournament. So I like this idea of having in-season tournaments. But yeah, it's disruptive to the schedule, but just hopefully they can work it out.
We'll see where it goes. A lot of negotiations still to come. Last topic on the table involves the media.
The media.
Oh my goodness, this story is not going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, you were, we were talking about this before, that she lied on TV. I mean, what's going on?
Charissa Thompson was a field reporter for NFL games on Fox, and she admitted last week that she made up stories when they go to her down on the sidelines for an update. Made up stories, or coming out of the locker rooms, made up stories. And she admitted she, in essence, lied on TV because I couldn't get access to the information. You know, they have this thing where Charissa Thompson and all the other sideline reporters, male or female, will talk to the coach either coming off the field or coming out. And some of the coaches are blowing her off. And, you know, coaches are in their own focused world.
Yeah.
You know, half of them are complimentary, half of them are pissed off because they're losing. So she said, I just wasn't getting anywhere with any of these guys, so I just made up generic comments. How the hell can you do that? Here's the background. And I, as voice of the Chargers and voice of the Seahawks, I was always upset because the network people, their broadcast teams, got inner access that we were never, ever allowed to have. They would have long, extended meetings with the coaches, offensive and defensive coordinators, that get to sit down in the lunchroom with star players, fringe players. They'd spend a whole day interviewing different people to gather all this data and all this information. The beat writers, broadcasters, we get 15 minutes with Justin Herbert, or we get 15 minutes with the coach, or if on the odd occasion, we'd get the chance to talk to the GM. So the networks were getting unbelievable access. Of course, they're paying enormous amounts of money. But what she did by making this junk up, and it was just generic creative stuff. And the coach never talked to her. And she said, the coach said, ... Well, coaches don't really say that much coming on and off the field. But I think it was irresponsible. It damaged her credibility, and it impacted all the other women who do good work on the NFL telecast. I get to know Tracy Wilson with Jim Nance's team, CBS. I think it's spectacular. So I got a real problem with that. You know, and you need to have inner smarts. You're going to be the on-field reporter. So you're covering a Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game. You need to have a lot of angles to storylines involving the Bengals, for example. So you need to show up with a lot of data that you researched, because not everybody around the country knows the inner workings of what's happened with the Bengals or the history of the Bengals, whatever it is. You need to do that rather than just showing up and sitting and hoping you get some quotes from a coach. You need to have knowledge of the teams that you're covering so you can, and you develop those stories on Friday and Saturday. She did not do that. So that's the problem I have. I'll give you a prime example. If I were the sideline reporter and say we're talking about Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, okay, so I would develop on the left side of my notepad a whole bunch of storylines. Off the top of my head, Joe Burrow injury. Your offensive line has been terrible. Tell me about Logan Wilson, your young linebacker that you discovered from BYU, who's been a stud. Tell me about the inner workings of the Bengals and why you were bad for so long and why you never spent money in free agency. That's the kind of stuff you need to go into these meetings to compile all the information so when you come back on Sunday on Fox TV, you can relay different angles to the story, even if the coach doesn't want to talk to you. Even if Zach Taylor blows you off,
right?
You got all these other stories you can still talk about. That's what the job of Charissa Thompson and these other sideline reporters should be. I'm sorry, she just comes off like a pretty face wearing bling. And I think she did a disservice to all the other female sideline reporters, and the Lisa Salters, Andrea Kramers, etc. And she hasn't been removed. And that really stuns me. And she admitted openly, she did this a whole bunch of times. Why are you still on my TV on Fox Sports? Now, here's the alternative, Charissa. Just walk down the hallway. Other side of the building, Fox News. Go to work for them. We know all their anchors lie. So I'm just stunned that she would do this, because I think it really damages not just her credibility, but it hurts all the other sideline reporters, and especially the females who've had to walk through a lot of tough times to get credited, to get access, and to get respected by the players. What are you doing? End of sermon. And John says,
fake news, right?
Oh,
so, it's not just a disservice to other women reporters, it's to the whole industry. I mean, we don't want to see people making stuff up. But, don't you find that those interviews, like going out of the half or coming into the second half, are just kind of a waste of time, because you never get anything substantive. The coach is already kind of halfway leaning, wants to get to the sideline or get to the clubhouse. I just think it's just sort of a nonsense ritual in these games now.
It sure looks like window dressing.
Yes, exactly. So to your point, that if you should have all this backup data, so that if you do get blown off or they do give you, canned answers,
you don't have to use them.
You don't have to use them. You can use some other stuff that you did in research. And by the way, they got all that access. And it's shocking that a play-by-play for the radio doesn't have the same access as the play-by-play for the TV. You think they would? I mean, because you guys are promoting their product.
Yeah. They paid more money than we paid, and we paid a lot of money for the radio rights.
Yeah.
But the prime example is, okay, you don't get access to Zach Taylor, the coach, or he gives you a bunch of generic junk. Who cares?
Right.
But you come on and you say, Joe Burrow has a severe wrist injury. Because you did your research, you understand it's Joe Burrow's third major injury in 4 years. And by the way, Joe Burrow has been sacked 124 times in 4 years because they never figured out the offensive line. And by the way, they picked up Kansas City Chief left tackle Orlando Brown to try to fix that, and they're still giving up a lot of sacks. So there's data there that you can use, because the average citizen in Painesville, Ohio, watching the broadcast may not know all the background of why Joe Burrow got hurt or how he keeps getting hurt. That's the job that Charissa Thompson should be doing.
Yes. Well, we need to get you as a sideline reporter. You don't quite have the bling of Charissa. But, Scott Kaplan's been doing that for quite a while. You think he does a pretty good job?
Does on radio, but he has limited time.
Yeah.
When we did the Chargers, we had 3 in the broadcast booth. We did not have a sideline guy, but the 3 in the broadcast booth, we exchanged gunfire all the time. And as the play-by-play voice, I gave Jim Laslovic and Pat Curran and Chet Forty and Billy Warndale a fair amount of time so they could talk back and forth. It was almost like they were starting to do a talk show in and around the play-by-play. I went to Seattle. We had a 3-man broadcast crew, one in the booth, a former player, great guy, Steve Rabel, and we had a reporter on the sideline, Ronnie Callan. And I went to them. I went to Ron all the time.
Nice.
I mean, he was like third in the booth, but he was down walking the Seahawks sideline with Dennis Erickson and Mike Holmgren. So there's ways to do it. And the whole thing is you're creating content. I'm sorry. She's pretty. She wears bling. I understand all that. But that doesn't appeal to a hardcore football fan that needs to know. And now she lied about it, and she made up a bunch of junk. It just blew my mind.
Well,
she's still on TV.
Yeah. And it's about credibility, and this is your industry. You want to have integrity. But, in Major League Baseball, they're putting these reporters in the dugout.
And they're interviewing the guys, this is the first time this ever happened during the game. You just hit a home run. Tell me about the pitch. What'd you think going to the plate? Can
you imagine they did that in the NFL? I don't know if they would put up with that.
No, I don't think they could.
Yeah.
But, so anyhow, hey, listen, our podcast is a bonus edition. We won't have Fans Forum right now, but that will return when we get back to our regular schedule. Podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores. 9 locations in San Diego to serve you. Been in business for more than 100 years. You got projects for fall, for Christmas, into the winter next year. You need a best friend. Your best friend when it comes to projects will be DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores. John, quickly tell everybody about the fact we need another teammate to sit at the table with us.
Oh, yeah. So, there's all kinds of opportunities to get people involved. I mean, this podcast, the 2 of us, we get together a couple times a week, but we want to get all of you involved too. And that's why we started the Hacksaw's Insiders group. You can go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com, show up, sign up and be part of that team. We got a lot of stuff planned there. we normally do the fans forum, but we got a bunch of social media comments. Can we get to some of those?
Go ahead, fire away quickly.
Okay, we'll go quickly. Here's one here about the Chargers meltdown. This is from Blazing Shackles. He says, Hacksaw, you're a hack. He didn't melt down, and it's not his fault the receivers can't catch. We've seen coach after coach after coach come and go over the last 30 years and still no championship. The one thing that remains the same is the team's owner, Spanos. When are you hacks and pundits going to place the blame where it belongs, on Spanos' head?
Well, they call themselves the first family of football, Blaze. They're currently in last place in the AFC West. It is a problem. It is a Spanos problem. I concur with you. But that being said, this is Brandon Staley's team. Front page of Brandon Staley's resume talked about his defensive accomplishments with Sean McVay when he was coordinator with the Rams and the other places he's been. He bears responsibility for what's happening on game day, the X's and O's, the schemes, the formations, and to a degree, the roster decisions. So, yeah, he melted down. And instead of him lecturing the media, don't ask me that question ever again. Hey, dude, scoreboard does not lie. You're 31st in the league in defense. You're 32nd in the NFL pass defense. You are what your record says you are, and that's not very good right now. So I don't quite agree with you that I should not be banging on Brandon Staley, because the whole world is banging on Brandon Staley right now. But in the big picture of things, yeah, you are correct. First family of football's in last place in the AFC West, and that's gone on and on and on since 1984. Am I right or am I right?
Yeah, it's like Bill Parcells, right? You are what your record says you are. And, you know, a lot of the fans were saying, like, you know, you can't blame Staley for these receivers dropping passes and everything else. But, you know, if it's not one thing, it's another, right? You know, and who's the focal guy here? I mean, Staley bears blame, but, you know, the rest of the front office, you know, it just doesn't, it's not working.
What I don't understand is you have all week to prepare. You have had preseason. Prior to that, you had OTAs. There is no reason the Quentin Johnston, the number one pick, should not be further involved in running routes and catching balls. You're paying him a lot of money as a number one pick. You desperately need him. You needed to coach him up every stop along the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, the union says, well, you only have so much time on the field with those guys. That does not mean your quarterback cannot have special sessions, side sessions, where they're running specific routes and he's got to catch the ball. Instead, he's dropping balls, and he did this at TCU. And so, I mean, that's just one example. I don't know how you solve the mess in the secondary, because they're playing all the guys they got on the roster, and they've still not been able to find the right guys. And I told you the story the week prior. Asante Samuel, who's been burned a bunch of times, made a bunch of plays, but burned a bunch of times. Asante Samuel is on a pass route Sunday in Green Bay. Guy runs a slant and is open. Samuel's behind him. Ball goes way over his head. Samuel's jumping up and down like, I did.
Yeah.
The hell, you did nothing. Jordan Love overthrew the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Next play, Samuel ran up the back of the guy, pass interference, big play, led to the game-winning touchdown.
Unbelievable.
That kind of junk, it just continues to go on and on and on. Okay, next social media shot.
Let's get another shot in here. And this is about the Padres. This is from Sean. He says, Waka and Lugo were no-brainers to bring back. Snell and Hader would be nice if you could get them on a reasonable deal, but less likely. A purge needed to happen with the goal of having better balance on offense, being more consistent. The young arms could help during a long season, but the goal is to be playing the best baseball at the end and good enough to make the second season. Winning division does not matter with the current playoff structure.
Here's the situation. Yes, they got one-year rentals that worked out. They put option clauses in those rentals. If those guys had good seasons, they could come back at a much higher price. That being said, the option dollar number on Waka and Lugo and even Nick Martinez is pretty high. I don't think you can afford to pay your third and fourth starters and your long reliever $16 million apiece. That's too high. So they rented them. It worked out. They'll dive back in, find some more rentals. Hopefully those guys will be good as the guys that left. The other oddball part of this is, you know, some of these guys have health issues. So even though agent says opt out, take you to free agency, hell, they still might be sitting here the second week of February without a contract
Mm.
because nobody's going to be willing to give Waka, who's had 3 different shoulder issues, willing to give him 3 years at mega money. So then the Padres dive back in and say, come back. You had a good season. We'll give you a bit of a pay bump. Maybe we'll give you 2 years instead of just the 1 year. There's a way if these guys, but some of these guys may still be out there a ways down the road. The question is, how long can AJ wait if he can't get him re-signed? Because then other guys will start coming off the board and going to other places. And in terms of Soto, I tend to think that every one of the guys in that batting order who had a substandard season, and they all did statistically, they're going to bounce back. But the problem is their payroll issue. And the problem is if you try to trade Soto, you're not going to get back what you traded for him. You traded 6. You traded the whole farm system to get him. Somebody else is not going to give you the whole farm system to rent him for 1 year with the hope they can convince Scott Boras to stay. So Padres are painted into a really tough corner. And now they, as we talked about last week, John, there are 9 pitchers gone from last year's pitching staff. 9.
Wow.
You know, that's big names. That's bottom of the roster names.
Mm-hmm.
That's AAA guys. They're gone. They're all on the open market, and I don't know if you can get them back. So Padres have a fascinating, very important couple of weeks of baseball going into December, going towards winter meetings.
Well, thank goodness they didn't sign Lance Lynn. Okay, so that's good. But, you know, the Lugo and Waka and Martinez, those guys are going to get paid, man. I mean, the other teams desperately need pitching. So they're going to work out a deal. I'm certain of it. The Padres may be on the short end of that. And if they lose out on these guys to come back, I don't know what the heck they're going to do. It's not like they're the Dodgers have all these young kids that are ready to come up. So they could be in some trouble here.
We'll see where this goes. Like I said last week, probably some trades for 1-year rentals to stabilize it. And there'll be other guys out there they can find that they've scouted. I mean, when they signed those 3 pitchers out of Japan, when Suarez came here and Garcia came here and Nick Martinez, and I knew about Garcia, and he had done well as reliever in St. Louis till he got hurt. I said, well, maybe one of these will work out. Well, all 3 of them worked out to different degrees, just like Waka.
Mm-hmm.
And Lugo worked out. So there'll be some guys out there that AJ will find because AJ's got boots on the ground, lots of different places. But he better, because otherwise that coach is not going to have a pitching staff, and that's a big, big issue. A couple more here on social media.
All right. You got to hear from your days at Extra 690. This is for thanks for subscribing. He says, wow, great memories. I always tell people I listened to Romy before anybody knew who he was. The basement days, Extra Sports 690.
Well, we had a unique team. We're going to do a salute to Sports Talk Radio and Extra 690 somewhere down road when we have time to put it all together. But it was a unique time. I think what made it so special is we were the first ones on the block to do it. There, at that point, Sports Talk Radio did not exist in Southern California as it does now. We were the first ones through the wall, and we were fortunate to have an owner that put us on a 77,000-watt blowtorch signal that you could hear from Baja to the Canadian Rockies up and down the West Coast day and night. So we're very proud of what we did, and each of the guys was very successful in different things, and some of us are still doing it very well.
Well, back when they made the move to go 24/7 sports, were people saying, you guys are crazy, this is never going to work? Because, you know, no one's really ever done it. I mean,
my whole life in radio was in radio, news talk, sports radio. The owner brought it up to me, and dummy that I was, are you sure about this? You sure this is going to work? Without paying attention to the fact that nobody had done it on the West Coast. And we were on a 77,000-watt blowtorch signal that you could hear everywhere. Now, WFAN in New York was the first to launch. WIP in Philadelphia was the second. We were right there. We were the third. Then came EEI in Boston, and then it finally exploded. But so we were the first through the wall, and nobody had ever done it since. And with apologies to what's being done right now, nobody's done what we did with the type of personalities that we did. Very expensive format to be in. It is not a cheap format whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You do have to have a good quality play-by-play anchor to be successful, and we did. As the Chargers were bad, the Chargers got good, and it kind of made our station. And then corporate radio came in and changed everything. So, yeah, we're going to do a special salute to Sports Talk Radio back in the day, somewhere down the road.
Okay, you want to get a couple more in here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here. Talk a little bit about the Aztecs and Brady Hoke, and this is from Dodger 607. He says, the smaller conferences need to start thinking out of the box collectively and not try to be accepted by the Power 5 schools, which they will never be.
Well, the issue is if you're a group of 5 and you're good, if you're San Diego State, if you were Boise State, you got following and you're in a bigger market. If you get to that next level, if you get into the Pac-12, Pac-2, whatever it's going to be called, you'll be able to recruit better players. Now, whether or not that's going to allow you to trigger bigger pools of NIL money, that's very debatable. San Diego State, for a marketplace as big as it is, for as many alumni as live here, they just don't have much NIL football money, and that's a real problem. Now, that's going to change because the NCAA's new executive director, Charlie Baker, is going to get control of the NIL, and they will come up with a different structure. And they're going to tighten the transfer portal that, John Riley, you can only go into the portal one time. You can only transfer one time. They're going to stop the cherry picking that's gone on. But everybody in a group of 5, I mean, I got all kinds of friends in the Mid-American Conference at Ohio, at Toledo, at Western Michigan, at Bowling Green, Miami. They all got the same problems: limited NIL money and getting cherry picked from the Big 10 or the Big 12 to come in and suddenly steal your top right tackle or your quarterback or your running back. You know, the top running back at UCLA is a transfer from Ball State.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback he was a record-setting quarterback at Kent State. He wound up at UCLA for his final season. So the group of 5s are probably going to get this thing solved with the new leadership at the NCAA. But if you go to the Pac-12, and that's on your business card, that opens up a lot more recruiting doors. Now, do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the money to be able to stay in the race with the established Washingtons and Southern Cals, et cetera? Mm-hmm. So that's a long-winded answer to your short question. But, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being in the Mountain West. I happen to think it's a really colorful conference. Community, the fans sure don't seem to like it. They seem to think it's real substandard, sub-tier. You're a fan. You tell me. You a Mountain West fan, or do you think, nah?
Well, I went to a number of the games when the Aztecs played at Qualcomm. And they were always pretty entertaining, a lot of fun. You know, it was relatively inexpensive to go. And I've been to the one at Snapdragon. It was a lot more money. You know, I was intrigued by this Dodger 607 guy saying, think out of the box. And I was thinking to myself, what could the group of 5 schools do to make them special and different? Because, you know, remember in baseball, the American League had the designated hitter. They did something different. What if, I'm just thinking spitballing here, but what if the group of 5 changed their rules to be like Canadian football? And so it was a more wide open, more dynamic offensive game. Might that make it more sexy?
Spitballs are illegal, John. What they could do is, and I think this is obvious, part and parcel of what they might do, is work out alliances and scheduling. So you get some big names that actually come to your building. Mm-hmm. If the Oregon Ducks were coming here to play the Aztecs, I think you'd draw a nice crowd.
But
obviously,
UCLA didn't draw a big crowd, though.
Mm-hmm. That's because the aura of Aztec football right now is on a down cycle. The prices are way too high. It's an issue. They got to find a working relationship to reestablish this with the community, and they got to throw the football.
Well, maybe if they could just have Dolly Parton for the halftime show.
Oh, I'd be there. You'd be there.
Yeah, wasn't that amazing? 77 years old, man. That was unbelievable.
So that's where we are. But you are correct. You know, be who you can be. I'll be intrigued to see 2 years from tonight, as we're doing this podcast, if there is a Mountain West movement and everybody goes to the Pac-2 with Oregon State, Washington State, then how do the communities respond? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what they end up doing.
Okay, listen, we hope you have enjoyed our Friday bonus package coverage. We'll be back with our regular schedule next week. We thank you for being with us. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores. 9 locations, over 100 years of experience, your best friend when it comes to projects around your home or business. That's DIXIELINE Lumber. John, have yourself a great sports weekend. He's going to be on the road next week. We're going to try to do something a little bit different. So just hold our hand and hope that we can get through our Zoom calls. But John, have yourself a great holiday, and we'll catch you on Monday.
Yeah, Black Friday ball games tonight too.
And you have yourself a great sports weekend. Thanks for being with us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.